Yo guys, if you've just bought a drone, I've got 7 tips for you before you make your first flight. Really important, check these out. Yo guys, Marlon King here, and this week I've got some tips for you when you get your drone and you want to fly it for the first time. And yes, I'm wearing sunglasses because I've got the sun directly in my face. So tips for flying your drone, and tip number 1 is be prepared to be scared. And quite simply, you know, if you buy a camera and you might have spent £1,000 on it and you're holding it in your hands, you're going to hold that thing tight because you don't want to smash it on the floor or anything like that. Now just imagine the same thing as a drone, and you let go of it and it flies up hundreds of feet into the air and it can smash at any point. And that pretty much explains how you will feel. So just be prepared to feel that way. It might be a little bit different if you've been lent the drone or companies giving that to you to try out. You're not going to experience that, but certainly if you bought it yourself, that's how I felt. Now tip number 2, and this might be an obvious one, but when it comes to buying memory cards, make sure you get the micro SD because that is what it takes. It won't fit your normal SD card. So actually when you buy memory cards, it's quite a good tip to buy the micro SD card that comes with the adapter as well. That way you can use it in any camera that you need. So that's quite handy. But part of tip number 2 is make sure that you go into the settings on your drone, the Mavic Air, this is the one I'm using, and actually set it to record to the SD card. So when I did my first flight, I didn't realize it hadn't defaulted to the SD card. You would just think that is the norm, but in actual fact it was defaulted to send the video stream back to my phone and record onto my phone. So I think that's an important tip because there is actually a big difference in quality between what's filmed on your phone and what's filmed onto the SD card. Tip number 3 is to go in and change your camera settings. Now this may not be needed day one, but seeing as you've gone into the settings anyway to select the SD card, you can go in and select the shutter speed and the quality you want to film in, whether it's 4K or 1080p. Just make sure you've got all that set up as you need for your first flight. And you know, it's also worth noting that if you're going to be setting a shutter speed, you may need to go out and buy some ND filters. That's next on my agenda, so just bear that in mind. By the way guys, if you're new to the channel, I make videos about consumer technology and camera gear, so if that's your bag, consider subscribing. Let's carry on. Tip number 4 is to leave it in beginner mode. Now, I know you might be keen to just start flying it around, and beginner mode definitely does make the thing very slow to maneuver, and you can only go a certain distance in height and distance away from you. I believe it's 30 meters on the Mavic Air. But I found this to be crucial because actually your first flight is quite weird. You don't know the controls, and I found, for example, I was twisting the drone round a little bit too much. So if I was flying the drone here, I was trying to twist it and it would over twist. So I found that beginner mode to be very helpful when starting out. So the next tip is all about preparing for your first flight. And yes, it seems like an obvious thing, however, I need to explain it to you how important it is. So for example, I took my drone to Moat Park in Maidstone, which is actually a really big field, and I thought this would be the perfect destination to do my trial flight. However, it was actually there was a little bit of a breeze, but it turned out to be stronger than I expected. So whilst on ground level it was okay, when I took it up, when I was doing my test flight, it was all over the place, especially when trying to come back towards the wind. So you do need to be careful of that, and I'd probably advise to try and do your first flight when there's no wind where possible. But of course I was a little bit too keen. The other thing is, obviously you can do the usual thing, making sure your batteries are fully charged. You don't want it to, well, you don't get much time in the air anyway, so it's well worth doing that. But another thing you can do is actually check an app to see what's going on in the air. So I installed the NATS Drone Assist app, and that gives me an overview of what flights and things are happening. So for example, in Maidstone today we had loads of aeroplanes doing a flight, and basically it showed a massive big path going straight across Maidstone, basically advising not to fly your drone on today. So well worth installing that app, and always check it before taking off. That's my advice. You don't want to get into trouble, of course. Next tip, another obvious one, but don't try and be perfect. Like, your first flight is going to be quite scary as it is. Try doing some of the basic maneuvers like forward, backwards, side to side, doing squares, both like an upward square and a sideward square. I just watched the Dunner Did It video on his first drone flight, and I realised actually I should have tried doing some more basic maneuvers first before I got too high and too carried away. I actually tried to do a flight quite far away, and with these strong winds I then struggled to get it back because I still wasn't that good with the steering, and I mean it makes it sound like more of a drama than it was, but I was getting like all kinds of altitude warnings on the screen and all this and that, and you know, your first flight's really scary, so just keep it simple and don't expect to be perfect day one. Like, you're not going to get those crispy smooth drone flights on your first go. And my final tip, guys, is before you take off, just take a few moments to study the screen and learn what all of the markings mean on the screen and the icons all over, because as soon as you take off, you're going to be too busy focusing in the sky, seeing where it is and trying to steer the thing. So it's actually worth noting where the height meter is, how to control the camera and various things like that. Do those tests when it's either not even taken off yet or when it's on ground, a very low level, you know, probably face height. That's my recommendation, because I wish I'd really done that before I'd taken it up too high and then gone, oh crap, where the hell's this setting? How do I know how to do this? How do I know to bring it back? So just look around the screen, see what all of the icons are, see what they do, maybe even test some of them out at a really low levels. It only takes a few minutes, you know, even if your first battery charge is used on doing all of those basic things, it's highly recommended. So anyway guys, I hope you really found this video helpful, and certainly look forward to getting your drone and trying it for the first time, because it is a pretty awesome experience. I haven't been this excited in so long, so it's well worth getting one, that much I can assure you. And you know what, yeah, you can skip some of these tips if you need to, but this will help you maximize and get the most out of your drone as quickly as possible, and I'm sure that's what you want to do. So with that in mind guys, take it easy, have a great week, and thanks for watching.